The morning of Bob Thompson's memorial in Asheville, North Carolina, began with a heavy mist hanging over the Blue Ridge Mountains, almost as if nature itself could sense the chaos that was about to unfold. Linda Reynolds, 56, owner of the Sweet Haven Bakery, a charming little shop in the heart of Asheville, was in mourning. For 25 years, she had been Bob's wife. He was a regional sales manager who spent half the year traveling to trade shows. He loved her apple pies, their quiet dinners at home, and evening walks at sunset. They had no children, by mutual choice, and Linda truly believed they were all each other needed. But that day, everything she thought she knew came crashing down. The memorial was held in a local community hall, a modest space with weathered wooden walls, rows of folding chairs, and a table, draped in white cloth displaying photos of Bob, smiling on vacation, holding a coffee mug, posing at business events. Flickering candles surrounded a framed portrait, while soft gospel hymns played in the background. Linda arrived early, wearing a simple black dress and holding a tissue she never used. She had baked the cinnamon cookies served at the gathering. Herself, a personal touch to honor Bob. She expected to see familiar faces, bakery customers, neighbors, maybe a few of Bob's co-workers, but the hall filled with strangers, and their tense, watchful expressions unsettled her. In a far corner stood a woman about her age, Barbara Coleman, a retired nurse from Raleigh. Her arms were crossed tightly. Beside her stood two adults, Sam, around 35, his jaw clenched, and Rachel, a few years younger, her eyes red from crying. They looked out of place, as if they hadn't expected the crowd either. Linda assumed they were colleagues of Bob's, but something about Barbara's expression, a blend of grief and shock, made her pause. During a speech by one of Bob's longtime co-workers praising his dedication, Linda noticed Barbara whispering to Sam while subtly pointing in her direction. The air grew thick, as though a storm was gathering. After the memorial ended, the hall slowly emptied. Linda stayed behind, helping pack up leftover cookies, clinging to routine as a lifeline. That's when the truth erupted. In the church parking lot adjacent to the hall, Sam approached her, his voice thunderous. "You've got some nerve showing up here," he shouted, pointing a trembling finger. "The mistress who destroyed our family, pretending to be a grieving widow?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Rachel stepped forward, tears streaming. "You lived with him, spent his money while our mom raised us alone. How do you even sleep at night?" Linda froze. Her heart pounded. Mistress? She was Bob's wife, married in a chapel right there in Asheville, vows etched into her soul. But before she could answer, Barbara stepped closer, her face pale, eyes wide in disbelief. "You're Linda?" she asked, her voice shaking. "The woman the wife?" The word wife slipped out like a painful whisper. That's when Linda realized Barbara had believed she was Bob's wife too. And judging by the shock on Barbara's, Sam's, and Rachel's faces, they had never known Linda even existed. The crowd buzzed. Phones were already recording. "Bob Thompson? 2 wives?" someone murmured. Sam turned to Barbara, enraged. "Mom, did you know about this?" Barbara shook her head, covering her mouth with both hands. "No, Sam, I swear." "He told me. He was traveling for work. I never—" Her voice broke. Breathless, Linda tried to explain. "I didn't know about you. I was his wife. I swear." But no one was listening. The confrontation escalated. Rachel shouted, "You stole our family and now you want sympathy?" Speechless, Linda turned and ran to her car, their voices chasing her like thunder. The local media had already begun, turning the incident into a spectacle. That night, alone in her house, Linda didn't cry. She sat on the living room floor, still in her shoes, clutching their wedding photo, Bob's smile now a cruel mask. Sweet Haven Bakery had remained closed since Bob's death, and now the hate messages were pouring in, emails from strangers, Facebook posts calling her the other woman. Asheville's local news ran headlines like "Scandalous Widow Shocks," "Community." Linda wasn't just grieving Bob. She was grieving a life that had never truly existed. And the worst part, everyone, including Barbara's family, believed she had known the truth all along. If you've ever faced a hidden betrayal, stay with me. Subscribe to the channel and share in the comments where in the world you're watching from. A week after Bob Thompson's memorial, Linda Reynolds woke to the sound of a phone notification. Still in bed, with Asheville's gray morning light filtering through the curtains, she hesitated before picking it up. Sweet Haven Bakery remained closed, its display dark, and Linda hadn't left the house since the confrontation in the church parking lot. The message was from an unknown number. Attend the will reading. Harper & Sons Law Office, tomorrow. At 10 a.m. Do not miss it. The blunt tone made her uneasy. What could Bob possibly have left her after such betrayal? And why did the message sound more like a summons than an invitation? Linda spent the day trying to stay distracted. She cleaned the kitchen, organized old jars of flour and sugar left from the bakery's golden years, but her thoughts kept spinning. The local media had turned the scandal into a spectacle. The Asheville Citizen-Times ran an article titled, "Two Wives, One Secret, the Bob Thompson Drama," filled with speculation about who Linda really was, an opportunist? A victim? Morning radio shows debated the morality of the whole mess, and the Facebook group Asheville Locals overflowed with nasty comments. "She pretended to be his wife for years, living off his money," read one. Another, crueler, "The bakery was just a cover. I bet she knew all along." Linda turned off the Wi-Fi, but the weight of those words followed her. The next day, she drove to the law office, a brick building in downtown Asheville with dusty windows and the smell of old coffee. Dressed in a navy sweater and black slacks, Linda felt like she didn't belong. In the conference room, she saw Barbara Coleman, the retired nurse from Raleigh, sitting with crossed arms, flanked by Sam and Rachel. Barbara's eyes met Linda's, not with anger, but with a weary look that mirrored her own. Sam, however, shot a glare, while Rachel whispered something to her brother. No one spoke to Linda. She sat alone in a corner, clutching her purse, like a shield. The attorney, a middle-aged man with crooked glasses, cleared his throat and began. "Robert Thompson's estate is substantial," he said, listing the assets: a house in Asheville, investment accounts, retirement funds, and a life insurance policy. Linda listened, stunned. Bob had always been frugal, shopping at clearance sales, insisting on fixing his old car. How had he accumulated so much? Then came the blow. To Barbara Coleman, Bob leaves a house in Raleigh and a $50,000 fund for each of her children, Sam and Rachel. The remainder, the Asheville house, bank accounts, investments, and policies valued at over $2 million, goes to Linda Reynolds, the sole beneficiary. The silence in the room was suffocating. Sam jumped up, face red. "This is outrageous. She manipulated him. Isn't it obvious?" Rachel slammed her hand on the table. "Our mother was the real wife. She raised us while that woman lived in a fantasy." Linda, breathless, looked at Barbara, bracing for an outburst. But Barbara simply lowered her head, her shoulders trembling. "I didn't know any of this," Linda murmured, but her voice was lost in the chaos. Sam pointed at her. "You'll pay for this. We're contesting everything." The lawyer tried to restore order, but Linda was already on her feet, stumbling out, the weight of the inheritance like chains around her wrists. In the following days, the scandal worsened. Local news blasted headlines like, "Mysterious Widow. Inherits fortune, leaves real family with nothing." A TV station interviewed a specialist who claimed Linda had seduced Bob into changing his will. Old bakery clients canceled their orders. Someone threw a rock through Sweet Haven's window with "liar" scrawled across it. Linda began locking her doors at night, jumping at every sound. An anonymous letter arrived in the mailbox. "Return. What you stole, or you'll regret it." It wasn't signed, but the handwriting looked a lot like Sam's. Alone, Linda began reviewing Bob's financial records she had found in a forgotten drawer. There were regular plane tickets to Raleigh, bank transfers to an unfamiliar account, even a gardening magazine subscription sent to another address. Each document felt like a stab, proof that Bob had split his life with surgical precision. Why had he left it all to her? Was it guilt, twisted love, or just one final manipulation? Linda had no answers, only the kind of questions that kept her awake at night. Tired of the hatred and isolation, Linda decided to act. She found Barbara's number in an email from the lawyer and sent a message. "I'd like to talk. No lawyers, no anger, just the two of us. Pack Square Park, Saturday, noon." To her surprise, Barbara replied, "I'll be there." The meeting promised to be anything but easy. What would Barbara say? Would she blame Linda, or reveal even more of Bob's secrets? There was one line in Barbara's message that Linda couldn't stop thinking about. "I was betrayed too." What else had Bob kept from them? On Saturday, Linda arrived at Pack Square Park, heart pounding. Autumn trees cast golden shadows, and the sound of a nearby fountain blended with the chatter of families. Barbara was already on a bench, no makeup, gray hair down, holding a coffee cup. Her eyes met Linda's, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Barbara broke the silence. "Did you love him?" The question caught Linda off guard. "Yes," she said, her voice hoarse. "Did you?" Barbara nodded, eyes misty. "For 28 years. I met him in college, you know. He was so charming, always telling stories. I thought we were a team, even with all the traveling." Linda sat beside her, the bench cold under her hands. "He told me those trips were for business expos. I baked cakes for him to take, wrote him little notes. I thought we were building a life." Barbara let out a bitter laugh. "So did I. He came to Raleigh every winter and summer, like clockwork, helped with chores, fixed the car. I never questioned the travel. He said it was the price of success, but now I know he was with you." Linda swallowed hard. "I had no idea about you, Barbara, or your kids. If I had known—" "Would you have walked away?" Barbara asked, not accusing, just curious. Linda paused. "I want to believe I would have. But 25 years, that's a lot of dinners, a lot of promises. He was my world." Barbara stared at the fountain, water reflecting the sky. "My kids blame me, you know. Sam thinks I was weak, that I should have seen it. Rachel, she barely speaks to me. They grew up waiting for their dad to come home from business trips. And now they find out he had another wife. They think you stole what was ours." "I never asked for this," Linda said, her voice trembling. "I didn't want the money. I still don't know why he left everything to me. Do you think it was guilt?" Barbara sighed. "Maybe. Or maybe he thought he was protecting you. He was always good at making us feel special, wasn't he? But he never chose either of us. He kept us in separate boxes, like trophies." A tear slid down Linda's cheek. "I pictured us growing old together, sitting on a porch, watching the sunset in the mountains. Now it all feels like a lie." "I pictured it too," Barbara said softly. "Thanksgiving at my parents' house, Bob carving the turkey, making the kids laugh with silly stories. I thought we were a family, but he was living two lives. We were just pieces of his game." They sat in silence, the weight of betrayal between them. Then Barbara pulled a worn envelope from her pocket. "He left this in the safe, an old letter from before he changed the will." Linda hesitated, then took the paper. It was a list of Bob's wishes, written years earlier, leaving everything to Barbara and the kids. "Why did he change it?" Linda asked. Barbara shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe he knew he was dying and wanted to fix something, or maybe it was just another game. But I do know one thing. We were both betrayed, Linda, and now my kids are pouring all their anger on You. Linda clutched the letter, her fingers trembling. What do we do now? Barbara looked at her, her gaze steadier. I don't know. But I don't want to fight you. I've already lost enough. She paused, then added, Have you found anything odd in his papers? Anything that didn't make sense? Linda frowned. Like what? I don't know. I just have a feeling he hid more. He was always so careful. They parted without promises, but with a fragile understanding. As Linda walked back to her car, the letter burned in her hand. Something about Bob's handwriting felt familiar and disturbing. Had he left more clues behind, waiting to be found? And what did Barbara mean by more things hidden? Bob's past was starting to feel like a puzzle with missing pieces. 6 months after the meeting with Barbara at Pack Square Park, Linda Reynolds left Asheville behind. She sold Sweet Haven Bakery to a young local baker, and the house she once shared with Bob Thompson, a house now filled with shadows of betrayal, went up for sale. Linda didn't tell anyone she was leaving, not the handful of customers who still said hello, not the lawyer handling Bob's estate. She just left. She needed a fresh start. And Bend, Oregon, with its Deschutes Mountains, clear rivers, and wellness-centered community, felt like the right place. At 56, Linda didn't want to be the widow from the scandal anymore. Her new home was a modest cottage with a wooden porch and a backyard where wildflowers grew freely. She brought little with her, a few clothes, photo albums of her mother, and an old mixer from her bakery days. The silence in Bend felt welcoming, not accusatory. For the first time in months, she slept without locking the door. Each morning, she drank coffee on the porch, listening to birdsong and the distant murmur of the river. She bought lavender and tomato seedlings from the local farmer's market and planted them carefully in the backyard. A small act, but to Linda, it felt like planting new roots. At the Bend Community Center, Linda found purpose again. She volunteered to teach baking classes to single mothers. The women, mostly in their 30s and 40s, called her Miss Linda and laughed as they learned to make buttery cookies. No one in Bend knew her story. She was just a silver-haired woman with kind eyes and gifted hands. Ruth, a retired neighbor who knitted colorful scarves, became her first friend. You have a way of making people feel at home, Ruth said one afternoon, handing her a teapot wrapped in tissue paper. Linda held it close, eyes misty. For the first time, she felt she might actually belong somewhere, but the past had other plans. The Asheville media wouldn't let go of the scandal. A tabloid blog, Carolina Secrets, published a hit piece titled, "The Widow Thief, Where is Linda Reynolds Now?" It claimed she ran off with Bob's fortune to live in luxury. Linda stayed off social media, but a letter arrived with no return address. Inside was a printout of the article and a handwritten note. You can't run from what you did. The handwriting was aggressive, slanted, unmistakable. It was Sam, Barbara's son. Days later, an email from a lawyer confirmed it. Sam and Rachel had filed a lawsuit against her, challenging Bob's will for undue influence and emotional manipulation. They claimed Linda had pressured Bob, already ill, to cut them out. Linda felt the ground shift beneath her. She hired a lawyer in Bend who assured her the case was weak. The will had been witnessed and medically validated. But the legal fight wasn't the worst part. Sam escalated things. He started sending anonymous texts. "Give the money back, thief." Rachel posted on Instagram, calling Linda the woman who stole our father. One night, Linda found a package on her porch. A photo of her at the Bend Farmers Market, scribbled across it in red ink. "We're watching you." The fear returned, but Linda refused to break. "I won't be the villain they want me to be," she told herself, tossing the photo in the trash. Determined to end the conflict, she reached out to Barbara again. "I want to resolve this," she wrote. "Not for them, for me." Barbara agreed to meet again at Pack Square Park. She'd be in Asheville for a doctor's appointment. Linda made the trip, heart heavy but determined. Barbara looked more fragile, this time the lines on her face deeper. My kids are out of control, she confessed. Sam's obsessed. He thinks you planned everything. Rachel wants justice for her kids. Linda took a deep breath. I don't want to fight, Barbara. I'm proposing a deal. I'll give part of the inheritance, but only to your grandkids. Education funds. Nothing for Sam or Rachel. They don't deserve it. But the children, they're innocent. Barbara blinked, surprised. You don't have to do that. The will is yours. I do, Linda replied. I want peace, and I think Bob knew that. I found notes he left. Things. He never showed me. He said he trusted me to do the right thing. He wrote that Sam was impulsive, that Rachel followed him blindly. I think Bob left it all to me because he believed I'd take better care of it, maybe even help the grandkids. Something Sam and Rachel never would. Barbara was quiet, processing. He never said that to me, but it adds up. Sam always blew his money on bad ideas. Rachel's calmer, but she never stood up to him. Bob must have known they'd waste everything. Linda nodded. He knew me. I ran the bakery on a tight budget. I planned every cent. Maybe leaving it to me was his way of protecting the grandkids, even if it hurt you. Barbara sighed. Did it ever occur to you that he manipulated us, even from the grave? Pitted us against each other? It did, Linda admitted. But I won't let him win. This is my decision, not his. They spoke for hours, working out the terms. Barbara revealed she had found Bob's diary, filled with entries about his double life. He wrote about you, she said he loved your laugh, but felt trapped. He never wanted to choose. Linda felt a knot in her throat. The diary confirmed her worst fear. Bob was charming, but cowardly. A man who couldn't face the consequences of his choices. Have you thought about publishing it? Linda asked. Barbara shook her head. No, it would destroy my kids. Maybe we should burn it. Together. Linda's lawyer drafted the agreement. 40% of the inheritance would go into education trusts for Barbara's grandchildren on the condition Sam and Rachel dropped the lawsuit. The rest Linda kept for her new life in Bend. When the case was officially closed, Sam sent a final message. You didn't win. Linda didn't reply. She was done fighting. Back in Bend, she planted more lavender in the yard and joined Ruth at a library book club. The women, in their 50s and 60s, discussed novels and shared pieces of their lives. One night, Linda finally spoke about Bob, not the betrayal, but the lesson. Sometimes you lose everything you thought was yours and find something stronger inside yourself. The women nodded, some with tears in their eyes. Linda realized she wasn't alone. Weeks later, a letter arrived, not from Sam, but Barbara. Inside was a photo of her grandkids smiling on a playground. A note read, "They're going to college because of you. Thank you." Linda held the picture to her chest, her heart full. Something was shifting, not just in her, but between her and Barbara. Could they build something beyond the pain? And what secrets still lingered inside Bob's diary? 1 year after moving to Bend, Oregon, Linda Reynolds could feel the crisp November air carrying the scent of pine and fallen leaves. Her cottage, now adorned with soft lights on the porch and a blooming lavender garden, finally felt like home. At 57, Linda was no longer the scandalous widow from Asheville. Here, she was Miss Linda, the woman who taught baking at the Bend Community Center, who brought cookies to the library book club, and who walked the Deschutes River Trail. With a calm smile, Bob Thompson's betrayal still hurt, like a distant echo. But Linda had learned to carry the pain lightly, as if it had become part of who she was now, stronger, more whole. Life in Bend had a gentle rhythm that warmed her heart. She expanded her baking classes to include local high school teens, who affectionately called her Aunt Linda, while they struggled, and often failed, to make perfect croissants. Their laughter reminded her she could still create something good. Ruth, her neighbor and close friend, convinced her to join the local church choir where they sang traditional hymns. During one rehearsal, as their voices rose in amazing grace, Linda felt a lump in her throat, not from sorrow, but from gratitude. "You have a calming voice," Ruth whispered, gently squeezing her hand. Linda also adopted a scruffy golden mutt named Sage, who now slept at the foot of her bed and followed her around the yard. He brought a simple joy she hadn't realized she needed. Every small moment, a sprouting plant, a sung note, a wagging tail, made Linda feel like she wasn't just rebuilding her life. She was rebuilding herself. The past still echoed. Sam, Barbara Coleman's son, never reached out after the inheritance settlement. But Rachel, his sister, had sent a short message months earlier. "The money's helping my kids, doesn't mean I forgive you." Linda saved the message, feeling a sharp sting of disappointment, but also a strange relief. At least the children were safe. The media in Asheville had moved on, though an old post from the blog Carolina Secrets occasionally resurfaced when someone got curious. Linda had learned to ignore it, choosing to stay rooted in the present. What surprised her was the connection she was slowly building with Barbara. Since that first photo of the grandkids, the two women had exchanged letters, not often, but regularly. Barbara wrote about Raleigh, the kids, even a garden she'd started. Linda responded with stories from Bend, cookie recipes, and pictures of Sage. Each letter was like a thin thread weaving something new between them. Linda found herself quietly looking forward to them. In October, Barbara sent a card that made Linda pause. A simple invitation with gold edges, asking her to Thanksgiving dinner in Raleigh. "Bring Sage if you like," it read. "It would be nice to have you here." Linda held the card, her heart racing with a mix of nerves and curiosity. A year ago, she had been the homewrecker Barbara and her children despised. Now, she was being invited to their table. It wasn't forgiveness, but maybe, just maybe, it was acceptance. The thought scared her and warmed her at the same time. She said yes, a cautious hope flickering inside her like a candle that could either fade or grow. On the eve of the holiday, Linda drove to Raleigh, Sage in the back seat, nose to the breeze. Along the way, she wondered if she was making a mistake. What if Rachel confronted her? What if the grandkids saw her as a stranger? But then she thought of Barbara's letters, of the grandkids' smiling photo, and chose to trust. Barbara's house was a single-story home with a white picket fence, and Christmas lights already strung. When Linda knocked, her stomach knotted. Barbara opened the door and wrapped her in a hug, warm, unexpected, enough to make Linda's shoulders finally relax. "You came," Barbara said, smiling. "Come in, it's cold." The house was filled with life. The smell of roasted turkey, the sound of children's laughter, a small Christmas tree glowing in the corner. Barbara's grandkids, Emma, 8, and Noah, 6, rushed to meet Sage, who wagged his tail so hard his whole body shook. Rachel was in the kitchen helping. She greeted Linda with a shy nod, eyes avoiding hers, but there was no hostility. Sam, Barbara had said, wouldn't be coming. He'd moved to Charlotte, still holding on to resentment. Dinner was served on a linen-covered table with turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, and a pumpkin pie made by Barbara. Linda brought cinnamon cookies, and when Noah devoured one and declared, "These are better than Grandma's," everyone laughed, even Rachel, whose tense shoulders softened. Linda felt a wave of relief, mixed with quiet joy. Sitting at that table was more than she'd ever imagined. Emma turned to her, eyes bright. "Are you the Aunt Linda who sent money to my school?" Linda glanced at Barbara, heart warmed by the word aunt. "I helped a little," she replied, carefully. "Thank you." "I want to be a scientist," Emma said. "And I want to be an astronaut," Noah added. Linda laughed, surprised by the tenderness she felt. These children, Rachel's kids, Bob's grandkids, were the reason she had shared the inheritance, and now, seeing their faces, she knew it had been worth it. After dinner, while the kids played outside with Sage, Linda and Barbara sat on the couch with mugs of warm cider. Linda cradled hers, the heat soothing the restlessness still lingering. Inside. "You didn't have to come," Barbara said. "After everything." "I wouldn't have." "I wanted to," Linda said, her voice gentle but steady. "I was scared, of being judged, of not being welcome. But I came because I believe. We're more than Bob's lies. You gave me a chance to be more than the villain, and that means a lot." Barbara nodded, eyes glistening. "I hated you, you know? But now, when I see you, I see a woman who survived. Like me." She paused, then pulled out a package, wrapped in plain brown paper. "It's Bob's journal. I read all of it. He wrote about both of us, how he loved us, but never had the courage to choose. He said Sam and Rachel wouldn't manage the money well. He said you were the one he trusted. You were always the practical one, the one who made things last." Linda held the journal, the weight of its pages stirring a mix of sadness and clarity. "He chose me because he knew I'd do the right thing," she said softly, almost to herself. "But sometimes I wonder if he really knew me, or if he just saw what he wanted to see." She looked at Barbara, feeling an unexpected connection. "Have you ever felt that way?" "Every day," Barbara said, with a faint, sad smile. "But now I get to choose who I am, and so do you." That night, back in Bend, Linda sat on her porch with Sage at her feet, the journal in her lap. Under the moonlight, she read a few pages. Bob's memories. Of her laughter, her strength, and his own cowardice. One line stood out. "Linda will do what's right. She always has." She closed the journal, eyes misty, not with anger, but with acceptance. The next day, she invited Ruth over for coffee and told her the story. Not all of it, but enough. "He trusted me to protect his grandkids' future, even when I didn't know who they were," she said, voice steady. Ruth squeezed her hand. "You didn't just protect them. You rebuilt yourself." Weeks later, Linda received another card from Barbara, this one with a photo of her, Emma, and Noah at the park. "Come for Christmas if you'd like," it read. Linda smiled, tucked the card into a drawer, and let the possibility warm her heart. She didn't burn the journal, but she didn't open it again either. Instead, she planted more lavender, sang in the choir, and taught another recipe to her students. Bob's betrayal had broken her. But here in Bend, Linda found something stronger, herself, and for the first time, the future, with Barbara, with Emma and Noah, with her new chosen family, felt like it truly belonged to her. Thank you for listening.